Before I go into these 3 stories, I want to set the scene for you. Sit back, close your eyes, and picture this all in your head. You are home alone. You recently heard on the news about a murderer who is on the loose in your hometown. You walk up to your sliding glass doors and look out into your backyard, and you notice a man standing out in the snow. He fits the profile of the murderer exactly, and he is smiling at you. You gulp, picking up the phone to your right and dialing 911. You look back out the glass as you press the phone to your ear and notice he is much closer to you now. You then drop the phone in shock. There are no footprints in the snow. It's his reflection. I'll be the first to say that all this stuff could have taken place in my head. The mind is a freaky thing and can play some pretty trippy tricks on you. Whenever I was scared as a kid, my dad had told me that in life, you should not be scared of ghosts. Fear the living because they can actually hurt you. In my late teenage years, I came into some money after my father committed suicide, and I received an inheritance from him. At the time of my dad's passing, he and my mom owned a cabin up in Oregon by Mount Bachelor. The cabin had been put up for sale since my mom could no longer afford the payments, and renting it out was not covering the payments either. The cabin was set to go on the market for sale in less than a month, and was in the process of finalizing all the paperwork with the realtor and lawyer. So for that month's time, the cabin was not going to be rented out any longer and was going to be vacant. I saw this as a chance to get away for a while and clear my head in light of all the things going on. I quit work, packed up my snowboarding gear, grabbed my dog, and headed up in my car to the cabin. My first 2 days at the cabin were normal and nothing out of the unusual happened. I spent my days playing with my dog in the snow, snowboarding, and the evenings playing PlayStation or listening to music, drinking, and smoking out of the balcony. I was already stocked up on food, cigarettes, and liquor, so I was pretty much a shut-in aside from the occasional out to hit the slopes. With my dog as company and DVDs and PlayStation as entertainment, I was quite content and started to feel relaxed after all the drama that had preceded my outing. The cabin itself has 2 stories. The bottom story had a living room and a side guest bedroom along with a small kitchen. Upstairs had another 2 rooms along with a walkout balcony attached to the master bedroom. Most of my time was spent either in the living room, kitchen, or master bedroom. I never ventured into the other rooms and always kept the doors leading into them shut. Anyhow, the 3rd day came around and I was going through my usual routine of playing with my dog, playing games, and watching DVDs. That day it was a pretty heavy snowfall, so I didn't feel like trekking down the hill to the main road in my car and decided to stay in. That's when things started to get a bit weird. In our area, there were only 2 other cabins adjacent to ours. All the other cabins aside from these 2 were around a mile away from ours. Surrounding us was mostly forest and very tall pine trees. Both of the cabins were empty from the past couple of days. I knew that no one was currently staying there. Around midday, while outside with my dog, I noticed what looked like footprints in the snow around the area surrounding our cabin. It was still snowing, so the footprints looked semi-fresh, like someone had been there in the last 20 to 30 minutes before me. I thought that maybe someone was staying at the cabin near me that I may not have noticed. Maybe they were shut-ins like me. The prints led away from my cabin and they disappeared in the snow towards the denser part of the trees. I disregarded the footprints and went back inside. Nighttime came around and I decided to head back to bed. My dog Midnight was laying on the bed beside me when I noticed his ears perk up to a standstill listening position. This was followed by him quickly jumping off the bed and running downstairs to the living room. I laid in the bed and stayed silent, and could hear him moving around downstairs back and forth. After around 5 minutes, he ran back upstairs to me and started to do his doggy dance for the sign that he had to go pee and he wanted to go outside. I can't say no to him, so we both went downstairs to the outside driveway for him to do his thing. Only he didn't want to pee. As soon as we were outside, he started to pull on his leash, trying to drag me to where he wanted to go. He kept looking down into the dense part of the trees where the prints had been earlier. But he also kept sniffing the side of the house and looked up towards the roof. After he figured out that I was not going to go where he wanted to, he sat himself down and just stared into the darkness. It was a bit unusual for him. Maybe there are forest animals out there that he wants to chase down. I didn't want the chance of anything to happen, so I pulled him back inside and we both headed back upstairs. About half an hour later, I was lying in bed when I heard what sounded like hooves walking on my roof. It was only a series of around 6 steps, and I rationalized that it could be a pine cone falling from a tree onto the roof, or maybe a kind-hearted forest animal running around. But here's the thing. The steps seemed to be spaced apart like a man-length stride, so it was really freaking me out. My dog also heard the noise and was quick to run to the balcony screen door expecting for me to let him out. So I grabbed my coat and shoes along with my cigarettes and flashlight and went out onto the balcony. As soon as I was outside, I lit up my cigarette and started canvassing the roof with my light. Nothing was there, and the snow on top was undisturbed. Weird. Must have been all in my head. What about my dog hearing the noises? Maybe he was feeding off my fear of paranoia. I started to calm down and relax again. My eyes started to adjust to the darkness, and I kept smoking and just staring at the stars and trees next to our cabin. That's when I saw it, in a tree that was a little taller than our cabin, and around 20 feet from the balcony I saw what looked like a man crouched in a squatting position in between 2 branches. It was squatted on one branch, and its arms were extended above its head, holding onto the branch above it. What the hell is that? I wasn't sure if I was just really seeing this thing, and it stood there just staring, and sat motionless. I noticed my dog stand up and start pacing behind me, lightly barking at the same time. The thing still did not move. I put my cigarette out and was debating on shining the light in the thing's direction. But something in my head kept screaming not to, so I walked backwards to the inside of the room and pulled my dog back with me. Once inside, I locked the door and shined the light in the thing's direction. But there was nothing there. I shut the curtains to the screen door and retreated back to bed. But later on in the night, I heard light tapping at the screen door, like someone was tapping on the glass with their fingers. It was constant and did not stop for nearly an hour. My dog seemed to stare at the door, but he would not go near it anymore. The weirdest part was that I had a feeling like someone was inviting me to open the door. But at the same time, I kept hearing my dad's voice in my head telling me to stay in bed and not do it. I listened to my dad's voice and just stayed where I was. I passed out eventually and woke up in the morning and everything was normal. The rest of the week I spent there was non-eventful. Nothing else happened out of the ordinary. I totally admit that it could have been in my head all along. A lot of the stuff was going on at the time. I was pretty screwed up from all the drama. I grew up in a town in a relatively rural area of the Midwest. Once upon a time, the whole area had been ancient woodland. But by the time I grew up there, urban sprawl meant that only a few small pockets of woodland remained, entirely surrounded by housing estates. I hated walking those woods. The quickest way to get anywhere from the street I grew up on was to take a footpath that ran from one end of the street, around the back of the houses, and then through a 1/4 mile wide patch of woodland before you reached the heart of the town. It only took a few minutes if you took the most direct path through. But my heart would be racing the whole time. I had to walk through there to get to school, or to get to the shops where my mom sent me to get groceries. And knowing that, my older brothers would tell me that the woods were haunted by the ghosts of people who had been hung at the gallows that once stood there. When I was a teenager, I became scared of the woods for a different reason. During the winter months, when it was already dark when I walked home from the school, older kids would sometimes lurk amongst the trees to scare the shit out of smaller kids and demand what little money they had, or sometimes even their mobile phones. But I'm an adult now, so when I visited my mom in my hometown last winter, the woods no longer held any fear for me. It had snowed properly for the first time in a few years, and my mom, in typical mom fashion, immediately informed her elderly neighbor that her daughter was visiting and would happily take the dog for a walk so that she didn't have to risk the icy pavements. The morning that I arrived back there, I found myself walking down the footpath into the woods with a fat, gray around the muzzle old Labrador in tow. It doesn't often snow in the city I live in now, so I decided to make a recent purchase, a good DSLR camera. I took it out with me to photograph the scenery. The fat old dog and I wandered around the woods for 20 minutes or so, the dog hobbling a bit in the snow and occasionally making a half-hearted attempt to chase wood pigeons while I snapped photographs of snow-laden branches and the stark black and white landscape. It was quite early on a Sunday morning, so nobody else was around, and there were very few other footprints in the snow, but I had started to get a bit cold, and I didn't want to exhaust the neighbor's dog too much, so I was just about to head back when I heard something moving quickly through the woods towards us. Someone was heading rapidly down the main path. The dog and I were currently out of view on a side path, but only for a few more seconds. I don't really know why it occurred to me to hide, but I did without really thinking about it. I hesitated for a moment, and then, mindful of memories of being accosted by hooded teenagers and robbed of my very first brick-like phone, I stepped off of the path and hid among the bushes and trees. The lens on my camera at the time was worth about the same as a month's rent, and I guess I was worried that some robber would see it and decide that I was an easy target. The dog hesitated for a moment as I tugged at his lead, but he followed me into the bushes just in time. I crouched down with a hand on his head, willing him to be still and quiet, as a person came into view of the path just a few feet away. I didn't really get a good look at them, but I saw that it was a man, tall, and wearing a dark jacket and a red baseball cap. I moved in a hurry. Thankfully, the dog remained quiet, and then the man was gone. When the man was well out of sight, the dog and I stepped back onto the path, and I decided to take a few more pictures before we left. When we were finally heading home, the near silence of the woods was broken by a loud drone of a helicopter overhead. I couldn't see it clearly until we were on the footpath behind the house and out from under the trees. But once there, I could see it was a police helicopter and it was circling over the woods. I returned the fat old dog to my mom's neighbor without any incident and completely forgot about the helicopter until a little later when my mom switched on the radio in the kitchen. It was a local radio station, and their top news story was that the police were hunting a man who had beaten someone to death on that secluded footpath earlier this morning. The path they described linked the woods I had been walking in to the center of town. The subject was described as tall, wearing a dark jacket and a red hat. I saw him fleeing the scene of the crime, and it was only my paranoia about the new camera that prevented me from meeting him in the middle of the woods. Earlier in the morning, with no one else around, I don't know what had have happened if I stayed on the path, but I'm glad I never found out. So this occurred many years ago, but it will forever stay with me and change my views on allowing my kids to ever have their own separate phone lines. It was a few weeks after Christmas, and my parents had gotten me my own personal phone with my own separate phone line. And I had given my friends the number because who wouldn't, right? Anyway, it was about 3 a.m. and I had been sleeping when the phone begins to ring. I thought, that's odd. Who can be calling me this early? We all have to be up for school in the morning. So I answered it, but all that could be heard on the other end was breathing. I laughed it off as someone just messing with me and hung up. I tried returning to sleep, but my phone rang again. This time I answered it and said, "Who is this?" Nothing, just breathing again. And at this point, I began to get irritated. I told him to stop calling and I hung up. I laid down again for about 30 minutes when my phone rang for yet the third time that morning. I was mad, so I answered and said, "This isn't funny. I'm trying to sleep. I have school in the morning. Stop calling me." This time there was a reply. It was a man's voice. Sounded very gravelly, and he laughed and he said, "I can see you. You're very pretty. Why don't you come out and play in the snow with me?" With that, I hung up and started crying. I ran to my parents' room and woke up my mom, telling her what had happened. She woke my dad up and made me tell him what had happened. So they both get up and my dad goes to my room and checks the window and everything. He makes sure all the locks on the door are locked and proceeds to tell me it's just someone playing a sick joke and that everything will be fine, and tells me to just unplug my phone from the outlet. So I finally go back to sleep until my mom wakes me up for school. I get up and start getting ready, open my blinds to my window that leads to the backyard, and noticed on this very frosty morning that there were handprints all over my window. I called my parents and they're totally freaked out. My dad immediately calls the police. The police come out to take a report and look at the evidence. And they decided to go to the backyard. Sure enough, there were a set of footprints in the snow that led right up to my window. They had gone from the front of the house to the back of my window, up to the back door, and then the front door. The police think the guy tried to get into our house. This video is of a man that has been coming to Andrew Nye's home and staring at him at odd hours of the night. Andrew even goes as far as calling 911. But this does not stop the watcher from coming closer. Check it out for yourself.
Hi, yeah, there's this guy just like standing outside my window. And he's just like looking up at the window. He's been there for about 30 minutes now. And he's male, maybe about, I don't know, maybe about 30, I guess. I can't tell.
Babe, there's more rocks or something.
Holy shit.
He's not even there.
Holy shit. All right. See, I told you there was two people.
There's nobody even here.
Yeah, but I knew that he had. See, look. See, up there.
Where?
He has to have somebody up there that's doing it. They're shooting like a BB gun or something.
What?
I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, please contact me on Twitter.